All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new video. I'm going to have to shoot this in a really low resolution because for some reason it seems like when I record things in high resolution, my mouth is not synced with the audio and it's driving me crazy. So I'm going to work on getting these bugs fixed, but in the meantime, I'm going to start shooting in low resolution because I'd like to continue to produce content on a regular basis. But aside from all that, I want to talk really briefly, you guys, about life after addiction, because life after addiction is really when your life begins. Because when you're stuck in an addictive pattern that drags you down, it just ruins every facet of your life and it makes everything much more complicated than it has to be. And life is already somewhat complicated. We have a lot of obligations. We have things that we came here to do. We have tasks, again, obligations. And to burden yourself with having to take on an addiction, which is basically like a full-time job. It's more difficult than a full-time job because it wastes all your money. It takes all of your energy. You have to constantly worrying about your supply and where to get it and if your dealer has enough or this and that. And it's just complicated. And on top of that, it kills you, paying for your own early demise. Yet, for some reason, somehow, the human mind and body can happily become addicted to these patterns. It's a very strange world that we live in, and we have to make sure to constantly contemplate the things that we're clinging to mentally, ladies and gentlemen, and assess them and analyze them. Otherwise, what feels comfortable, what feels good in the present moment may end up snuffing out your candle short. The fact that a substance makes you feel good is not a direct reflection on how healthy it is for you. If everything that was good for you, how would I say it? If we genuinely believed that everything that made us feel good that we consume was good for us, we'd all probably not make it past 25, 30 years old, because some of the most deadly substances, ladies and gentlemen, create significant feelings of euphoria, significant feelings of being numbed, significant drastic reductions in anxiety and depressive thoughts, but it's only temporary. And when that substance or alcohol wears off, you feel worse than you did before you went and consumed the booze, because now reality is burning 10,000 times brighter because you're no longer in or under the influence of that substance. You need to learn to be above the influence. You need to learn how to be okay with life and living your life without having to inebriate yourself. Because as I've said in recent videos, and I'll continue to say, the more you train your mind and your body to lean on substances or alcohol or cigarettes, anything negative that's addictive, the more you keep coming back for that substance, the more you train your body and your mind to depend on it. And before you know it, it's literally what you use to cope with life. And when you've reached that point, that's literally when you've given over to the addictive pattern, the addictive substance. But you don't have to be in this rut. You can easily climb your way out of this hole that you've put yourself in, and you can learn a lot in the process, and you can gain a lot of insight. Climbing yourself out of an addiction requires discipline, it requires willpower, it requires effort, and it requires courage. And when you decide to let go of an addiction, ladies and gentlemen, and you take the proper steps to get out of it, every day that you don't give in to that substance, your willpower and your strength feels like it's fortified 10,000-fold. Now, people ask me all the time, how did you do it? How have you been sober so long? Weren't you intimidated by your first day? Weren't you intimidated by just living without the substance for 2 days a week? And what I'm trying to get at here is people are often intimidated by I'm trying to put something into words, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm having trouble putting into words, so bear with me. People are afraid of the length of the journey when it comes to getting sober. They think that it's going to be some huge, difficult struggle to stay sober for a prolonged period. But once you realize that once you get through the first week, you've pretty made it half of the journey. then you'll realize that it's actually much easier and that you don't have to be intimidated by the idea of being sober forever. Because that's something that many people fall into the rut of. They think that, oh, I'm going to have to do this forever. How could I do it? It's so difficult even one day. But ladies and gentlemen, once you get through a week, you'll start to realize that, wow, I feel good without this substance. I have more optimism. I feel healthier. I feel like my life is prolonged. There's a handful of things that I'm not going to get at in this video. I'll make videos about it in the future. But once you get through that first week and you realize, wow, I can do this, you'll realize, and a light bulb will go off in your mind and you'll go, wow, I've made it half the journey. When you've been addicted for so long and you've used something so repetitively for so long, it makes the first day without it, it makes the first week without it, the first month, such a significant stride that it feels like you've made it halfway through the battle of addiction. So don't be afraid of how long it's going to take, ladies and gentlemen, to be sober, because this is a lifelong thing. You've got to realize that you're afraid of the journey of sobriety because you can't imagine your life without the substance, if that makes sense. Again, there's some certain concepts that I'm trying to put into words that I don't think are coming out properly, but I'm doing the best I can. I can hear my cat through this wall. He's not supposed to be on the kitchen counter, and he's on the kitchen counter doing God knows what. Ripley. Crazy animal. But I want to see you get sober. I want to see you be happy. I want to see you get healthy. I want to see you thrive. And the only way you're going to do that, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you find your foundation. And without being sober, it's going to be really difficult to have a foundation, because what good is trying to get healthy if you're constantly smoking cigarettes? What good is desiring to get healthy if you're constantly drinking beer and just destroying your liver? What good is desiring to be healthy if you are engaging in a process, in an addictive pattern that is taking away your health? What is it like? It's almost like you're drowning yourself, essentially. It's like you're coming up for some air and then you willingly drown yourself again. You come up for some air and you willingly drown yourself again. All the while, you could stop drowning yourself if you chose to. And if you chose to take the proper prior steps to quitting, which in many people's case is contacting a medical professional, especially when it comes to drugs and alcohol. Tobacco is much more forgiving. You know, I mean, if you quit smoking tobacco, and I've done this, and it took me a while to finally get to a point where I was completely done with cigarettes, because I would quit for a month, I'd quit for a couple months, and then something would drag me back into smoking, which, you know, I'm not blaming my environment or anything else. It was me that chose. We are the ones that make the decision to give in to these substances, and that's the first key to learning how to get sober. It's all based on you. It's a choice, ladies and gentlemen. In my opinion, addiction is not a disease. But aside from that, you know, when you quit smoking cigarettes, you'll get some headaches. You might get constipated. I know I did, not to get too graphic, for quite some time. But there's remedies for that, and there's ways to get around that. But the agitation and the frustration is really the demon that needs to be exorcised when you choose to smoke or quit smoking cigarettes. But it goes away. There are healthy ways to deal with the negative consequences that come from quitting cigarettes, ladies and gentlemen, or anything for that matter. Constipation is one of the main reasons why people go back to smoking tobacco. In fact, that's one of the reasons I chose, and like I said, it's a decision. I chose to feel hopeless after the second week of me quitting. One of the many times that I quit cigarettes before I finally quit, you know, I just go, God, I'm not having normal bowel movements. And everyone knows that being constipated is miserable. So it's like you're trapped by the tobacco. On one hand, you want to quit, you know it's killing you. But on the other hand, you have a life, you have a 9-to-5 job, you have all these obligations. And on top of that, you've got to walk around constipated. That feeling can make that cigarette look awfully enticing, because you're approaching it from a perspective of, I don't want to do this, but I want to feel comfortable. I need to go to the bathroom. So this is one of the demons that needs to be exercised. You should never give in to something that's killing you, ladies and gentlemen, simply because it will make your life make your life feel easier in the present moment. Because we live in a world governed by certain laws, and one of those laws is the laws of cause and effect. And although you may do something that feels good or gives you some temporary relief in the present moment, it directly affects what happens tomorrow. And then you live in a vicious cycle of that. And oftentimes, the more you give in, ladies and gentlemen, to not doing what you need to do now and neglecting what's so important now, your sobriety, or changing your diet. There's so many things that we need to do now that we put on the back burner. And the more you do that, the more you become comfortable and instruct your unconscious and subconscious mind that, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And before you know it, you're living on a loop. You're living in a vicious cycle of I'll do it tomorrow. And days become weeks, weeks become months, months become years. And before you know it, it's 20 years since you set your goal to quit smoking, and you are still smoking cigarettes, being a goddamn chimney, destroying your lungs, ladies and gentlemen, which in Chinese medicine are the seat of wisdom. So when I quit smoking cigarettes, at first I tried to, use one of those little vaporizer cigarette pens. And I did that, I successfully did that for quite some time until I realized that, what am I doing here? I'm just smoking a digital cigarette. How can this be any better? And the more I looked into it, they're associated with something known as popcorn lung, which I'm not going to get at in this video. Electronic cigarettes lead to an addiction to an electronic cigarette, which I believe they use like as carriers. There's like a particular oil. They use propylene glycol. They use toxic substances to embed the synthetic nicotine or whatever the hell it is that they put in these e-cigarettes. They use propylene glycol in garbage waste products. It gets to a point where you wonder, okay, what's worse for me, the e-cigarette or the tobacco? Because organic, real, natural tobacco, no pesticides, isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. But when you use it all the time, it becomes very toxic. No amount of smoke in your lungs, there's, how would I say it? I mean, regardless of whether something's organic or not, you can overuse an organic substance, and smoke, there's no way around that. Just because smoke is organic doesn't mean that it's just not going to destroy your lung tissue. And nowadays, especially when I'm in California, but I see it now that I live in Virginia, but especially when I go home to visit family in California, I see so many people driving their cars with those stupid vaporizer boxes. And I don't know if you guys know what these are, but they're different than the e-cigarettes. They're like these boxes. They're about that big. And it's got this little nodule that comes out of the end. And to see grown men and grown women driving around in their cars sucking on these boxes, I'm not trying to sound rude, but I've gotten to the point where I've been away from tobacco so long that it just looks it's so stupid to see grown men and women sucking on their little devices as if it's like their little pet that they have to constantly nurture. And again, I'm not trying to sound rude, and I can sympathize with you if you're a viewer who's going through the struggle of that addiction, because I've been there. I never got one of those boxes. They weren't really prevalent when I was smoking cigarettes, but those things must be super addictive, because to see the way people blow smoke out of those things, it's like blowing, it's like a goddamn dragon. Seeing how much smoke or vapor those things produce, that cannot be good for your lungs. Now, I'm talking shit about cigarette smoking. I'm not talking shit about cigarette smokers, because I've been one. I know what it's like. It's a highly vicious cycle. But I want to see you quit. And regardless of what the addiction is. Now, I've talked in the past about addiction and said that oftentimes people who are alcoholics also smoke cigarettes, and that it can be beneficial at times for an alcoholic who's going through recovery to have access to cigarettes while he or she gets through the temporary discomfort of the withdrawals and the derealization symptoms that come from serious alcohol abuse. Oftentimes you go through hallucinations when you quit. You can have auditory hallucinations, tactile hallucinations. You can feel highly ungrounded. There's a handful of different uncomfortable symptoms that come with quitting alcohol after chronic usage, abuse of it. So having something to also deal with the cravings of alcohol, if you have them. I didn't have them because I was so scared for my life that I just completely quit. But if you have a desire for a particular substance like alcohol, it can be nice to have some tobacco as a temporary backup system to use like a stress ball until you get through that rocky period, which shouldn't be more than a month in my opinion, or give or take. It's all based on context. So I'm not going to give any set in stone, dates or anything like that, but you should not, once you get through alcoholism and you gain your bearings, it's time to continue working on yourself and let go of those cigarettes, because cigarettes are highly deadly, ladies and gentlemen. I saw them completely destroy the health of my grandmother on my father's side. I've seen them destroy people's lives. And the thing with cigarettes and all addictions is that they creep up on you. It's like all of a sudden you feel like you're fine, and then you start noticing a cough, and then you got some wheezing. You keep smoking, and eventually it gets so bad that you go to the doctor and he tells you that you have a serious lung issue or this and that. You have any clue how traumatizing that is to go into a doctor's office and be told that, hey, you've got lung cancer, and then you go, I created that. You think life is bad now? Imagine what it's like to go into a doctor's office after you smoked for 20, 30, 40 years and get told that you have lung cancer. Now, if you're watching this video, view it as a warning system. Imagine a red light strobing back and forth with an alarm going off. This is a wake-up signal, ladies and gentlemen. Listen to it. Let it enter your heart and let it move you. Because if you ignore warning systems and you keep going down a path that you know you shouldn't be on, then you are just violating what you know you need to do. And you are actively, by default, if that's the case, engaging in willingly living in a vicious cycle of I'll do it tomorrow. And like I said earlier, days become weeks, weeks become months, months become years, and before you know it, it's 20, 30, 40 years down the road. You look back, half of your life is gone to substance abuse. That creates a feeling of guilt, and guilt drives depression. Because when we're in a state of feeling guilty, or we feel like we're hopeless, and when we're hopeless, we will literally reach for anything if it gives us just a temporary relief from that state of feeling like you're in a dark hole. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where if you don't play your cards right, and if you don't constantly analyze your path in life and where you're going, you might walk into a goddamn wall. And that wall might be made of hay, that wall might be made of wood, that wall might be made of concrete, and that wall might be made of rusty nails. So watch where you're walking. Watch where you're walking. That's a metaphor for get control of your life. Because if you're in a toxic cycle of addiction, you don't have control of your life. The substance does. And it steers you in whatever direction that it motivates you to steer you in, based on how it makes you feel emotionally. It makes you feel like an emotional wreck. Addiction makes you feel like this life is hopeless without the substance. It is so absolutely disgusting that these substances create this type of reaction within the physical body. The human mind, excuse me. I want to see you get help. I want to see you thrive. I hope that my channel and my messages can get into your mind and into your heart and move you some way today to make a positive step in the right direction for your health. Whether that be getting a goddamn water filter, whether that means you going out in the front yard or backyard and standing on the bare ground or the earth. Let me rephrase that, Jesus. Whether that be you getting a water filter, going and standing barefoot on the ground, the bare earth, out back for 15 minutes so that you can do some grounding. You don't have any clue how good that is for you. Whether that be you experimenting with a little caloric restriction, or maybe you need to experiment with a little excessive caloric intake. Starving yourself is a bad thing, and there's a fine line between caloric restriction and starving yourself. I don't want to see you go on a starvation diet, especially if you're trying to get sober, because starvation diets and fasting that is misplaced causes excessive amounts of stress on the body, which creates cortisol, it creates adrenaline, and that just chews up your life and makes you feel like shit even more. So it can be very beneficial to lean on food if you're going through addiction recovery, ladies and gentlemen. Who cares if you gain some weight? Who the hell gives a shit? It's not like weight can't be lost. It's not like weight can't be lost. In fact, as contradictive as this may sound, because this is a health channel, having a few extra pounds on your body in this toxic world can be a beneficial thing, because your fat cells store poisons, ladies and gentlemen. It's a buffer system. It's a safety system. Right now, I have a few extra pounds on me, but I'm embracing it and I feel healthy as shit. Excuse me. Jesus Christ. You know, an important book that I'm constantly recommending here on this channel and on my Patreon page and my various other social media accounts and outlets is Your Forces and How to Use Them by Christian D. Larson. This is a purple book with yellow lettering that you can't see right now because it's being filmed in black and white. This is about $9 on my Amazon store, and that is an instruction manual on the mind. Christian D. Larson teaches you in this book that we have no limitations other than the limitations that we put on ourselves and that we instruct our subconscious mind with. It's a user's manual on the mind. I highly recommend that anyone, regardless of whether you're an addict or not, get this book and read it. It's a short read. It's about 160 pages. I've got a lot of valuable lessons from that book that I teach here on this channel. That's another great thing that you can do while you're recovering from addiction. Learn, constantly put yourself in a state of learning. But I should probably get going, ladies and gentlemen. I want to keep this under 25 minutes long. This wraps up another installment of my addiction series. Please look through my archive. I have tons of videos on addiction and alcoholism and recovery. And make sure to start living your life today and stop dying on behalf of an addiction that does nothing for you other than kill you. We live in a world, ladies and gentlemen, this is a culture of death. And the system archons, the system overlords, the establishment wants you to be hooked on their drugs. They want you to be hooked on the booze. They want you to be stumbling around because they don't want you to have any of your goddamn power. It's time to wake up and realize that you are a limitless electrical being of light. You came here to fulfill a mission. And your booze, your addictions are an anchor for your development. They're an anchor for your understanding of the fact that you are much more than what you think you are. It's hard to realize this stuff when you're constantly putting poisons in your system. Liberate your tissues, liberate your heart, liberate yourself, liberate your mind, liberate your soul by choosing now in the present moment to do what it takes to get sober, to get clean, to end addictions that are negative, whether it be cigarettes, bad food, bad drinks, whatever it is. Figure out how to get your life back on track and seek professional medical attention for alcohol and drug abuse, because that is the safest way to go about getting clean, because they have very, very legitimate tools. Western medicine, I may disagree with some of their nutritional information and whatnot, but when it comes to addiction recovery, they have some very potent, powerful tools and some specific drugs and whatnot that can help you get through the withdrawals safely, to keep your blood pressure from going through the roof, and just do it. Just do it. And until next time, peace be with you all.